It is time for another professional match of StarCraft 2, and what I got for you today is a Protoss versus Terran played on Whirlwind LE. Spawning in the bottom left corner as the Protoss player, we have none other than the German known as ShoWTimE. And spawning in the top left, his opponent, it is going to be none other than the blue Terran player. Well, his name right now apparently is special, but really, it's Major. I actually just had a quick look. Major has the tendency to change his nickname up every once in a while. I'm not entirely sure. Usually he goes back to calling himself Major after a little while, but I just looked it up. He's known as Major, Windy, Terran, Princess, Brittany, Kitty, Memory, Cute Angel, Nonji, Special, Shovu, Light, Mr. Jamvad, Based Lord, and apparently the latest one in that series of nicknames is going to be none other than Special, but really, it's Major. He's one of those players that all of a sudden sometimes starts winning tournaments and starts playing extremely well. It's one of those players that doesn't seem to, like, you know, travel all the way all over the world like some of the players do and, like, participate in each and every tournament out there. But whenever he does, he seems to get really, really good results. And it's kind of a fascinating player because most of the time you don't really know exactly what to expect out of someone like this, because oftentimes, like, players don't really have too much practice against him, but on top of that, not too many games to watch him play either. So say, for example, if you want to go up against ShoWTimE, well, ShoWTimE has been playing a ton over the last years, and I mean, there's a ton of games of him to study, but for Major, for example, it's a little bit more tricky to do so. But anyways, I haven't seen this game just yet, so let's figure out what both of these players are going for. Looks like we do have a quick Reaper opener right here from Major, whereas there is a rather quick expansion here from ShoWTimE as well. He decided to go for the Gateway and the Cybernetics Core, and now also the second gas into the main, as well as now the Command Center on the low ground right here from Major, who I may very well be calling Special in this game, because I mean, I see the name Special pop up pretty much everywhere I go. So Command Center going down, and also the follow-up right now for the Factory. Now, as it is as of late, the Protoss versus Terran matchup has been a little bit tricky, and with tricky I mean pretty heavily in favor of Terran. In the professional scene right now, it seems like Protoss players are struggling rather well, or rather a lot right now, as it is ever since the recent changes to the StarCraft 2 multiplayer. As you may be aware, the Siege Tank got buffed up, the Liberator style is very annoying to play against, and it seems like most of the Protoss players are exactly struggling against that, where Terran players are literally just trying to contain the Protoss and preventing them from moving out across the map, just by simply putting down a bunch of Siege Tanks and Liberators and some bio units in front of it. I don't know exactly if that is the plan that Major has in this game as well, but it's one of those strategies that Protoss players have been struggling with. Now, Blizzard has decided that they are not going to change anything about the meta game just yet and not nerf or buff anything, just because they want to give Protoss players a little bit more time to figure out whether or not there is a build to go ahead and counter that. In many instances, for a couple of weeks or sometimes even a few months, one race is going to be dominating over the other until one player randomly figures out a new build that will absolutely shut it down. Ooh, nice little bit of a depth control there, almost catching that Reaper, but the Reaper does manage to get out of there just barely in time. We do see the follow-up right here from ShoWTimE, going for the quick Twilight Council, as well as the quick robotics facility, as well as a single gateway that's being added on here as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he decides to go for another one here very, very shortly. There we go, another gateway indeed does end up going up, and he's going to be able to pressure his opponent with that for just a little while. In the meantime, Major going for the quick Widowmine drop, a very, very popular strategy, as it is as of late for Terran players. They pretty much always open up with some sort of aggression as well, and really going for the quick Widowmine play really just forces the Protoss to go for this robotics facility early, just so they can potentially see them, as they will need observers in pretty much every single scenario. And exactly that is what we see out of ShoWTimE right now as well. It looks like he's actually going to go for a blink play here rather early on as well. I quite like that. Not something that is, you know, as common as maybe, for example, the Adept style, and a lot of players were messing around with, for example, the charge upgrade for Zealots as well. But all things considered, of course, Blink has never been a bad upgrade. It's always been an extremely powerful one, and you can do a lot of damage with it if you manage to time it correctly. Another player really going for a quick third base right here. I quite like this actually from Major as well, making sure that he gets his factory out, going for that Siege Tank production here already, after going for a little bit, or at least like a couple of Widow Mines. Now, speaking of which, the Widow Mines are going to try and make their way into the natural. Perfect pylon placement here though from ShoWTimE. He will be able to indeed photon overcharge that. Oh, did you see that? That was beautiful. He actually shot right there at the probe that just entered the assimilator. Not sure if that was perfectly timed right there by ShoWTimE and if he actually intentionally managed to do that, but he ended up losing like I mean, one entire worker this game just because of the early game Reaper that managed to get some damage in, but that was a perfect shot down there. And the robotic facility, or rather the robotics bay follow-up right now for ShoWTimE, will allow him to go both up to Colossus as well as some more upgrades, but more than likely the Disruptor, as that seems to be the unit of choice. Although, to be fair, quite a lot of Protoss players, rather, as of late, have been switching into that Colossus style as well. At the same time, though, Special, playing that style that most of the Protoss players really hate playing against. He's going for the bio, he's going for the starport with the reactor now as well, so he can start double producing both Metavex as well as the Liberators, and he's going for that factory now too. Now, he is switching it over, going for the reactor instead, so we may indeed see some Widowmine follow-ups here. And the third base does go down here eventually for the Protoss, so he's gonna try and sit back for just a little while longer. Beautiful micro here by ShoWTimE, having that Observer pretty much on top of that Metavex, so it cannot drop off the Widowmine and do any additional damage. And it looks like we're setting up right here for quite a nice macro game. Neither of these players really being all too aggressive. No real damage being dealt here either. And for the moment, Major is just simply sitting back, but it looks like he may very well be looking to move out here across the map. 2 Metavex will be joining this party very soon. He will be able to start double producing here out of the factory very shortly as well. And he can indeed do some damage if he absolutely wants to. But for now, it looks like with a little bit of micro and a little bit of, you know, scouting here from both of these players, it's turning out to be rather even. You can see though, the supply counts are already reflecting quite a decent advantage here for the Terran units. And that usually means, and that usually really comes down to the fact that Terran, like, can be a lot safer with their builds, right? As Protoss, you usually need to invest into quite a lot of defensive structures in order to be safe here as well. Now, eventually, that Metafact does get dealt with. There are more additional gateways going up, but on top of that, this third base had to be paid for, and there are a lot of Terran units right here at the front door. It's 102 supply right now for the Protoss versus 113 here from the Terran, but you gotta keep in mind, these siege tanks recently got buffed up, and they do a ton of damage. There is indeed a Colossus out, extended thermal lens, not quite done just yet in the robotics base, so this has to be something that he's worried for. And it looks like with the Terran player moving up the ramp and the Protoss being caught off guard, he may very well end up losing this third base. In the meantime though, he is picking up a lot of reinforcements, which is very good, and the supply count will be evened up here very shortly. But that third base that he was desperately trying to get up sadly did get outmaneuvered, and it looks like the Protoss actually decides to go for a massive run back. He's gonna try and do as much damage as he possibly can, moving up the ramp here from the Terran player, and slowly but surely the Protoss is going to be advancing here. No third base for him up just yet, and there is this massive army here from Major that is still out on the map that is not really able to do a whole lot. Now, please keep in mind here, there is going to be a little bit of aggression from this Liberator that will be taken care of just very quickly, but the Mothership Core is at home, so this Protoss army can easily be trapped. It can easily be trapped, and he needs to be extremely careful with proper siege tank positioning and all of these reinforcing units coming in, as well as the Liberators. All of a sudden, pretty much all of these Protoss units are gonna be in a ton of trouble. Nice little bit of pickup micro there with the Warp Prism. We'll be able to do some additional damage, but the Terran player managed to catch this army out on the map, and while maybe some of these Stalkers can indeed blink to their safety, it looks like ShoWTimE's forces are indeed caught out on the map, and while he managed to do some damage, he has to pay for it with his entire army, as he did decide to leave that Mothership Core at home just for defensive purposes. And while I did end up, you know, using a Photon Overcharge to get rid of one of the Liberators there, I don't think it really paid for himself. At the same time, a couple of units here from the Protoss still at the Watchtower as well, and it looks like ShoWTimE really, like, you know, not having that big of an army anymore. I mean, really, we see a ton of units here out of Major, and he's got the units that Terran players absolutely adore playing in these scenarios. I mean, he's got Bio, he's got the Siege Tank, he's got the Liberators, a couple of these Stalkers trying to do whatever damage they can, but it looks like the Protoss is going to be forced home here for the time being. Both players trying to get the third base up, third command center about a third of the way done, maybe a quarter, and then, you know, this third Nexus going up as well. But here's the slow push, here is the style that Protoss hates playing against, and that third indeed is going to be forced to be cancelled. There is a single sentry in this Warp Prism. He may very well need to drop that off in favor of some of these units right here, but this is what Protoss players hate, okay? So here's what I'm predicting is gonna happen here. What happened initially after the patch first came out, right? A lot of the Terran players tried closing out the game here, but then they realized that if with some, you know, with some proper Colossus positioning and some good Disruptor hits and some, you know, good Blink Stalker micro, in many instances the Protoss is still gonna be just fine. So what Terran players have been doing instead as of late is just sit at the bottom of the ramp and just simply sit. They just let the Protoss come at them, and in the meantime, they can be mining off of that third base and just get a lot more forces than their opponent can. And really, this position to fight into, I mean, there's Widow Mines, there's Siege Tanks, there's Liberators already ready to go, there's a lot of Bio Army as well, and it looks like he may even be setting up some defenses here as well. I think he decided to go for a bunker right here. There's a little bit of Shade Micro there, trying to get some vision of these units, but instead, he's going to use the SCV to repair the Siege Tank. At the same time, the Warp Prism going for the counter attack here. Of course, there is still a lot of production as well. Big warp in into the main base, and the Terran obviously is stationary here, so he's not really going to be able to do a whole lot, but at the same time, he's mining from a third base, whereas his opponent really isn't. Of course, he does need to defend against all of these Adept, a lot of the reinforcing units immediately being picked up, but it looks like there are going to eventually be enough Terran units here to get rid of all of this. He actually decides to go for another warp in. Wow! Extremely aggressive here. I actually quite like this, as with a couple of these Stalkers, if he manages to get rid of some of these Liberators, he's gonna be just fine. Nice little bit of micro there, once again, manages to get it, but eventually that Warp Prism will indeed end up going down, and with this many Bio units, this is going to be an extremely tricky army, with even a Viking landing as well for the Protoss to deal with. And while this is all going on, right, have a look at the income tab. Because no matter what, in pretty much every single scenario, well, actually, it's not too crazy right now, because there's still a lot of units mining here for the Protoss as well. But you can see, like, right at this point in time, the main base as well as the naturals will start running low, and that third base will tell the story. At this point, Major still has a lot of stuff here, and it looks like, actually, ShoWTimE may very well be going for a push here. No, does decide to cancel the Shade out in just a second, but, like, look at this. This is so dirty. There is no way that Protoss can really go in there. Sure, there are a bunch of Colossus, and sure, the army actually does look quite threatening, but there's Widow Mines here. There's even a missile turret setup that can obviously hit all of these Colossus as well, and this is like the perfect setup for the Terran player. He's just gonna sit back and wait. He knows that his opponent will be mining out very, very shortly. He knows that he's not going to have a Warp Prism out on the map anymore. And it looks like ShoWTimE is fed up with this. He's going to try his very best to do some damage here. Nice little bit of slow pushing, but it looks like he's going to indeed go for it. Even pulling all of the probes off the line. Trying to take out this stationary Terran army. But look at the amount of units there are here for the Terran player. Still a lot of these Colossus, though, doing damage from the back. Beaming away, but with these Vikings up in the air, eventually all of the Protoss units here will get sniped. And indeed, Major ends up obtaining the victory. Beautiful game here, actually. I think what really allowed Major here to get a huge advantage was, you know, first off, him countering his opponent's third base when it initially went up, but also him, you know, catching the opponent's army all the way out on the map after realizing that the Mothership Core was at home when he saw that when he was doing some Liberator harass. And I mean, he knew that the army was out somewhere, and he just had to find it and kill it. Beautiful play here by Major, ends up taking the game, and I hope you enjoyed watching this one. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below, and if you want to see more, make sure you subscribe so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. And while you're at it, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Links are in the description. I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you in the next one.